Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our World AIDS Museum Spotlight Series. And today we are so excited, Dr. Raquel Lopes and I, to host Ken Williams, who is an artist, first and foremost, in many different ways that we're going to talk about today, who works at the intersections of public health and HIV activism. We had the pleasure of working with Ken this past year on a project for the Broward HIV Health Services Planning Council, and he helped us produce a video about reasons to get involved and engaged in that. And that started out with a series of really great storytelling workshops to help people empower them to be able to tell their story. So we were just having a little discussion about Ken's work, and he gave me a great explanation of that. So we're going to start off there, and then we'll get into our questions that we do in the spotlight. So tell us a little bit more about how you think about the work that you do, Ken.
I essentially feel like the work that I do is about finding language. I live with HIV. I've been living with HIV for a little bit over 10 years now. I think it may just 11. And what I found out is that people are really looking to find words to fill in the blanks for this experience, having to cope and reconcile this idea of living with HIV, something that comes by way of being intimate with other people, to now having to figure out, how do I manage myself in a world that stigmatizes this disease, that stigmatizes the touch, the behavior I thought was integral with this other person. And so it's really about finding the language for me, and then being able to share that language, because what I found out is that people are looking for the permission to exist, and that comes by way of knowing what to say about their experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those are, yeah, go ahead.
If that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, because I was also looking at you as a video blogger, and I don't think that does it justice, but an influencer in that people who actually are on YouTube or in the spaces in which you are there presenting, doing workshops, etc. It is you being yourself that I think attracts people in spaces like that. And so part of me says, so how did you find yourself in the intersection of HIV?
Very, very good question. How did I find myself in the intersection of HIV? I started out blogging. I was a video blogger for the LGBT Black community to begin with. And there was a point in the recession, because this began for me in 2018, the recession. And I was looking for something else to do with my knowledge, my skill set, my time. And I wanted to devote learning more about the LGBT experience. I wanted I knew HIV was a part of that experience. I had very little knowledge of HIV, and I wanted to learn more. And so I found an opportunity to volunteer for an organization called Test Positive Aware Network in Chicago. And little did I know that they were also looking to hire for a particular role in their prevention department. And so I wound up applying, and I wound up getting the job. It was during my course of working there in the first month or so that I test positive for HIV. Did that become my first lesson? And so what I credit for that moment in that time of my life was being in a place where there was a community, where I didn't know that there existed a loving, thriving community around HIV. Was I working with the people that were doing that were orchestrating that? And so I find myself to be covered in that way. And so because I am privileged in that way, part of my duty, it seems, is to share that experience that much more, to let people know that it can happen for you, that you can come to a place of self-acceptance. And so that's sort of how I sort of fell into the pot of HIV.
I think it's really important that you found a community, a supportive community, and that to me is so important to anybody in working through emotional intersections with anything, and especially HIV. So it's really I'm so happy that there was that kind of community that made you thrive
Mm.
um, in it, and you were already there. They already were holding you in their arms. Uh,
Absolutely. I tell clients all the time that the medication has done me justice. Like, go get the medication, be in treatment as soon as possible. But having someone to talk to, finding people to relate to coach you through the things that you don't know yet, has been invaluable. So yes, that community has been integral for my process and for my art. So yeah.
So backing up a minute, I'm wondering what you remember from when you were a kid growing up hearing about HIV, because you sort of grew up through the middle of it. And I'm just wondering what kinds of things that you had been hearing, and then all of a sudden you find yourself working in it.
So, ooh, very interesting. And I feel like I don't get to tell this part of the story too often. I'm an 83 baby. HIV didn't hit the map for me until 91 when Magic Johnson sort of came out about his status. And during that time, I must have been 8 years old. I had my first sexual experience at 8 years old. It was awkward, but it was with the young girl down the street. If I was 8, she was 9. And we played house, and in the middle of house, she asked to share our private parts. And so it was knowing that Magic Johnson was on the news, knowing that it was about sex, knowing that I had committed something private with someone else. I thought in my 8-year-old mind that I had contracted HIV. And so I remember going to my mother in the dead of night, having a conversation, waking her up, saying, "Mom, there's something I have to tell you." And she's looking at me like, what's going on? And I tell her that I think I have HIV. And she just sort of wakes up out of her sleep to say, like, "Why do you think that you have HIV?" And I told her, like, me and the young girl down the street, we touched. And she had to explain to me in that moment, like, that isn't how that works. And I remember her like cradling me for the rest of the night because of that. But that was sort of my first experience with HIV, some of my first memories. But since then, I've had people sort of come and go in and out the journey. I've had friends pass away, and working in the field, I have friends who live this thing like hardcore every day. So that's sort of been my experience.
That's really helpful to us. We're gonna use this as a sound clip because, we started a program this summer. It's called Building Healthy Futures, and it's a elementary prevention program where we're really not getting into any specifics about sex per se, but we're talking about HIV, and we're talking about how you protect yourself, and these sort of larger concepts around consent and your body, and these different things. And that's just another example of using your voice and language to really talk about, I think, a lot of us don't think that 8-year-olds are thinking about these things, but they are. I mean, they're hearing the same things that we're all hearing, and they're trying to make sense of them. And that story is a really beautiful example of that. And it's been funny, doing this and trying to explain to people. Sometimes I get dead silence on the phone. I get this sort of radio silence when I say, yeah, we want to come to your summer program and do this prevention thing with elementary school kids that combines art. And they're like, okay.
Very interesting. I know a few organizations that do preventative sort of like art conversations. And I think they're so valuable. Like, I would love to see what that looks like for children. I think some of the conversations that we need to have with our youth is like comprehensive sex education that includes talks about sexually transmitted infections, that include talks about HIV.
Mhm.
Children are having sex. I think it's safe to say that more often than not, young, like the people who are in risk for HIV get younger and younger almost every year, like 13 to 24. So it's safe to say that teenagers are having sex, and they should benefit from having that conversation with someone who can coach them through the toolbox and what to say, consent. So yes, I agree. I would love to see that program come alive everywhere.
Yeah, it's exciting because one of the things we do in our educational program is really try to reflect in our communities that we're speaking to presenters who look like them. And so a couple of the artists that we use reflect the kids that we've been talking to. And you can see them light up because they have this idea that they don't know what their future holds for them. And so they see somebody doing something that to them is old, and yet they see that there's a possibility. And then there grows hope. And then there grows that seed within an individual that says, I am somebody. And I
And
think
I,
that at the root of what we do is really trying to give kids or people the toolbox to say that I am somebody, that I am worthy, and that I can be able to navigate this in a way that is beneficial to me. And I think that that's the why we box our stuff around that, because we can talk at people all day long. And if you're not reaching something inside them, then they're not going to take that information and then pass it on to other people in their community. And that's what we're really trying to do, is pass information through into the communities that we may not be able to get, but we are getting people who want to talk to us who are part of that community.
you know, what I've learned is that people will wear a hard shell, but everybody wants to sort of open up. Like everybody wants to be touched, whether that is emotionally, whether that is physically. And so I feel like, you know, I live also in the intersection of being a consumer as well as a professional in the field of HIV. And so being able to touch someone as a consumer and being able to touch someone as a professional, two different sorts of feelings, but the environment that you create as a professional for people, like, gets to open them up, gets to make them blossom, and helps people thrive in that way. So I feel like it's more important to not only like educate those who aren't in the field, those who are consuming this information, but it's also important to get those people who are doing the sort of education and leading into a space where they are being graceful and receptive and open for people who are coming to knock on their door to say, I need help. So yeah.
So I want to switch gears a minute here and just ask you about, so after I met you, I Googled you, you know, Raquel's always laughing at my my background research, but I was just like, who is this guy? You know, how did he get to be so awesome? And so I run across Ken Like Barbie. Um, and so, you know, you told us about your getting started with TPAN in Chicago and working with them. So then you got into this like whole YouTube phenomena and wildly successful. So tell us, how did you, why, what do you think, how do you attribute that success? Like what happened that made it work?
You know, from my perspective, it doesn't feel like, I don't measure it as it working. I measure it from the people who have reached out to me to say, thank you for finding the language for it to help me with my journey, to say that I'm now thriving because I saw that you were thriving. It's really the permission piece for me that sort of keeps me going, because a lot of this is me exercising the words out of my journal. So I'm sharing myself intimately every day. And so I do that to keep myself out of things like mental health issues. And so to find people to say that I register, I see that too, I feel those words too, has been rewarding in a way that nothing else has rewarded me as such. So, I mean, I continue. They are the people who sort of give this life and give me life. Because they help keep me accountable to myself and to my health.
That is something, because I think you are a role model for people. And people throw that word around too much lately, but I really truly think that when you can, I always think that vulnerability is a superpower. And if you're able to be vulnerable, then you're able to stand your ground, and you're strong in the sense of who you are. And then so what, I guess what's the question I'm trying to think? You know, if you think about HIV, and we've been um, living and working and thriving um, and having advocacy and movements with HIV for at least 40 years that we know about. And so what would you think is the most important thing we should really be doing around HIV today?
Ooh, I think some of the most important work that needs to still happen is decriminalizing HIV.
Mm.
Making the laws sort of match the science. Going back to this idea of having comprehensive sex education in schools, I think keeping the conversation on the forefront is some of the work that we still need to do, because it's the thing that is still killing folk. Like, it's this thing that still breeds the stigma, that still breeds the fear, that still breeds the decisions that people make to either exclude or ignore or kick out or send away. It's time that we sort of debunk all of that. And I believe that starts with decriminalizing HIV, making that a federal, a local, all of that. I think making that a priority is how we sort of begin to do that.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And you know, I think what Raquel and I both are struck by in kind of being working in this and being around it all of our adult lives, is that the longer you're in it, and I think this is one of the challenges we have with planning councils and different groups, is the longer you're in it, the more used to it you are, and you forget that not everybody talks about it. And especially someone younger who gets HIV, who hasn't been brought up in this sort of HIV culture, they're just brand new to it. And they don't have the language, like, and that's why the work is so important. And they're not aware that these things are out there. One of the things we've been working on here is redoing our chronology of HIV/AIDS here in the museum. And so one of the stories that's a really important story is when Obama lifted the travel ban, that that people who were living with HIV could now visit the United States, and that didn't happen until 2009. When and then going back and telling people the history of that, you know, that's something that got enacted in 1987, and got put into place based on this crazy paranoia around that. So yeah, I mean, that resonates just so well with what we see here as well, on that.
Yeah, I think that what I envision in the way in which Andy was talking, and I know that you can also, we're working in it. And yes, Andy and I have been around, we're seasoned enough to have been around from the beginning, and seeing it all the way through to the present. And what I'm struck with is that the education, the conversations that we have are with people who have a little bit of understanding of what HIV is, and yet all those other people outside the box, or our bubble, don't see their connection whatsoever with HIV. And so for me, I think that the next steps are to really reach out to those folk, because in order to get to the end of HIV, it is those folk that we have to really speak to and have language for, so that they can come into the circle and understand the importance of it. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think Agree. I don't want to argue with that at all. I don't even want to touch it. I think that's perfect. I think that you said that perfectly. I feel like we do sort of operate in this bubble where we use all of this jargon and where we use all of this knowledge around HIV, but we're not sharing with those who are the people getting infected because they don't know enough about it. So the question is, how do we bring them to the table? How do we give them the language, the voice, the cues, the social cues to sort of like interject it in their own sort of like sexual preventative measures? Like, how do we do that? You saying that made me realize that I've been focusing a lot of my career on finding language to help those who feel like that because they're living with HIV, they don't have a voice, find something to say. And now you're right, being able to extend that olive branch to say, this includes you, how to say this includes you, to sort of welcome them in, because they're looking to be welcomed in. We just haven't found the language to do that yet. So that's very interesting. That could be the next thing we have to figure out here at KLB. See there? See there?
I think you're the guy to do it, Ken.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll try. We're going to try together.
And I think, one of the things I just want to throw out here, this is going really, really fast, and I knew it would, and that's because you're such an excellent speaker. But one of the things I want to throw out here to people and to note about your work is it's not only about showing your vulnerability, but the other thing that I noticed when I did that dive down the rabbit hole of Ken Like Barbie and watched a bunch of the things is that it was not only so honest and vulnerable, but it was also in some places really fun and entertaining, because it was just upbeat. It wasn't something that was going to bring you down, or sort of like the noble suffering or something like that. That's not really, I didn't get that in your message. And so I'm just curious about what your thoughts about that are. Is that something you set out to do, to kind of create more fun, or make it lighter, more entertaining, or is that just a byproduct?
I want to say it's a combination of all the three. I feel like it's in my personality to know that people sort of absorb things best with humor. And so to sort of humanize this idea, this topic that's so huge and so heavy, everybody's afraid of HIV. How do you do that? You sort of humanize yourself in that, in those situations. And so I try to do my best with doing that, humanizing myself and making the conversation about HIV as normal and as natural as I have to live it. And so that has been the practice. I'm happy it's being received well. That's what I heard from you, is that that's being received well. So, I mean, in that I feel successful, because to me, because I'm so close to the journey and the story that I'm telling, it does kind of feel like sappy and melodramatic at times, but I also feel like that's just part of the language. That's part of the nuance. That's part of the experience too. So I don't want to shy away from that either, but I'm happy to hear that you have caught the special inflections of humor in some of the work. So I'm happy that's getting received. Bravo. Bravo.
We always ask this question, and it's really because some of the times the work we do is heavy and does pull at our heartstrings, and we feel the struggles and the thriving, but we're also human. Yeah. And when you're not doing the work, what do you do to decompress and to just relax? What's Ken's secret for beauty and longevity?
Beauty, I will say aloe vera mucus. I crack open an aloe vera all the time and rub the mucus on my face. That's some sidebar.
I'm gonna keep that one down too.
But to get back to my center, I turn things off. Like I turn off the TV, I turn off the computer, I turn off my phone. I hate phone noise. So to all of my friends who I know that I owe phone calls to, I love you, I'll call you back. But I turn things off. And part of that is just to hear myself think, hear myself feel. What is my body saying? What is my heart saying? What is my mind really saying? So to sort of self-care I shut things off, and the world has gotten so dark. What I would say about COVID-19 is that it was a blessing to sort of sit in the stillness that COVID-19 brought so much clarity. So I try to mimic that clarity, that stillness, often when I feel like I'm too anxious or too frazzled, or if there's too much going on.
You know, that sends me down that other rabbit hole of the intersection of COVID and HIV, and the loose parallels that in language you find people talking about that harks back to how we talked about HIV in the early days. And I see that people have a visceral reaction to that sometimes, and that COVID really set that off. What do you think about that? Yeah.
I mean, some of the earlier moments during the pandemic was I seeing people attack others for trying to either figure it out, figuring out, I think we were all sort of figuring out COVID in the early stages of the pandemic. And so, I mean, it's just how mean people get with each other. Who are again, people just trying to figure out how to maneuver through all of this new whatever this is.
Right.
And so it reminds me of the conversation about grace. Like, how are we extending grace? Do we extend grace to ourselves? How do we extend grace to other people? And I feel like during something like this pandemic, it has been most important to sort of like give grace to others. Just let people sort of map out, live in their own truth, whatever that truth is about, you know, why they wear a mask, why don't they wear a mask, you know, why they have to get out the house, why don't they have to get out the house. Some people are living in terrible situations at home. So, I mean, I felt like it was just, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a whole conversation in and of itself. So I'll stop there.
Well, we may have to have you come back so we can have that conversation. One of the exhibits that we're going to be having in August, later on this month, is an actual intersection of HIV and COVID.
Okay.
And so this is a great prelude to a conversation that we will be beginning to start having a conversation, having thoughts and language around. So thank you for starting that conversation, Ken.
Thank you for asking me the question. Thank you for.
I know. Well, you know, we're at that point, and I always say that we are going to have to think of another platform, another vehicle to really delve deep into real topics that is longer than 30 minutes. But I think that we will find that, because we are the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center, and there's so much rich information and stories with the intersection of HIV. And I can't thank you enough, Ken, for sharing yourself, your story, and your thoughts with us today. You know,
Thank you guys. Thank you.
And so that brings us to the end of this installment of the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center's Spotlight series. As we do this every first and third Wednesday of the month on our Facebook Live, and now on our YouTube channel. You will start to see them as premieres. So stay tuned in two places that you can see our Spotlight series. And we look forward to continuing the conversation around HIV and AIDS. Thank you again, and see us next time on September 1st is our next one. So we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day, everyone.